So this is the beginning of the electrics, and this guitar is the Chicago Blue 2011 uh, Gibson Les Paul Traditional, and it has been an amazing guitar. We discovered that it does have the 57 Classics in it, and I had no idea because I'd never played it outside or been outside with it until well into the late 2010s and into the 20s that this guitar actually has a flame top. There is some figuring on it, and I had no idea. I just thought it was blue and had no idea that it was anything better. Henry J. era guitars were kind of famous for this. This particular one has lived inside most of its life. It has spent a little bit of time outside at, open mic nights and things like that, but it is absolutely a sheltered guitar and has no checking that I can find on it. No lacquer shrink, nothing. So it's been pretty climate controlled ever since. Now I have done some modifications to it, most notable of which is the poker chip, but just things to make it my own. And like I say, it has not disappointed in sound or build quality ever since I've owned it. This one has the distinction of being one of the last rosewood fretboards made before the 2011 raid. So there is the distinction of being unique because it was shipped out and was on a Guitar Center shelf, or at least in a Guitar Center warehouse, before the raid actually happened. So this is, like I say, a unique guitar in that respect, but also just another traditional because of it. So this is the Fender 1992 model American Standard in steel blue metallic. Now, this guitar started life off as just a regular old standard. It had Tele pickups in it. I don't remember exactly what the names of the pickups were. I don't think it was like Twisted Tele or anything. It was like Tele standard pickups back in 1992. But it's lived a little bit of a life and wound up being a guitar I had one before that was actually a 93 model, and this one is a 92, and I bought it to replace that guitar because that one was stolen from me back in the mid 90s. But this guitar came to me with some different pickups on it, so I took the time to put some lace sensors on it, and it has been absolutely the best mod this guitar has ever had. That, combined with the fact that it now has a black pick guard, means that it is unique, because the factory it would have had a white pick guard. So it's a little different than it originally was. It looks different. It sounds very much like a Tele, but lace sensors are noiseless, and that means that there's no hum, and that makes it a really nice guitar to play out and about. Open mic nights are easier when you don't have any kind of feedback or noise pickup from the guitar. So 92 Fender Telecaster with lace sensors on it. So this is the, I believe, 2019 model Fender American Pro Limited, and this one is unique because it has an ebony fingerboard. The limited models were, I guess, came about later in the process of the American professional guitars, and they were outstanding because they had pickups that, much like the Fender Ventera series, are beveled edge pickups, and that makes them have a little bit brighter sound to them. Now, that could just be the way they're wound, but the Ventera series guitars used these because there just seemed to be some mystique about them. And these guitars have a chimey sound that is very much different than the American Pro standards, the vintage ones. Unless they have that, they are just a little bit different. And these guitars have a unique sound to them because of it. And like I say, I don't know what the situation is about why those pickups and their beveled edges have a difference to them, but versus a normal Ultra, Lux, anything else, they're different. And I really love the way this guitar plays. And it's just unique to have an ebony fingerboard on a Stratocaster. It's just, especially a streaked ebony fingerboard. So anyway, this again is the Fender American Pro Limited Stratocaster. So PRS had a deal with the Grand Am Road Racing / SCCA driving series, and they had these guitars that they made that were given out like trophies as part of the racing series to winners. They also made commemorative versions of those that they sold to the public as the SE models. Now, they did this for like 4 years that I can find online. And this one is one of my favorites because of the way it looks. The figuring and the green just give it a look that is unique and special. And this guitar surprisingly plays really, really well and has a great sound. This is a Korean made one because it is an SE. So you kind of have this moment of it's not maybe as good as a American made one would be, but it's hard to say, oh, it's bad, because it's not. It's not bad at all. And if you can find one of these for a good price, and I would say $400 or $500 is the price you're looking for. These guitars are kind of cheesy because of the Grand Am Road Racing inlays, but they are absolutely wonderful playing guitars, and you will not be disappointed by the sound or the build quality. Even for a Korean-made guitar, they're pretty high quality. I would definitely say that considering these were made in like the late 2000s, they were probably some of the best import guitars made at the time. Especially when you look at things like the Epiphones that were coming in from Korea and China. So I would, even the Fenders didn't have as good a quality control as PRS had at the time. And I would definitely say that PRS has kept up their quality where everybody else kind of sometimes let theirs go lax. But there's something to be said about PRS. They are one of the highest quality brands for a reason. So this is a 2020 model PRS S2 35th anniversary model. Very similar wiring and setup to the Paul's guitar. You can see the dip switches there, and this guitar is 100% the cleanest across the spectrum guitar I own. It doesn't matter how loud you put it, how soft you put it. The pickups on these guitars are 100% what you think a PRS should sound like, no matter where you are, what range, where on the neck you're playing. It doesn't matter. It's all exactly what you think a PRS should sound like. And that's valuable. As a musician, you kind of want that, especially if you're out playing with others and you're looking for a particular sound that you've gotten used to using, or you know, a riff that you're looking to recreate, this will do it every single time without fail. It has locking tuners. It's got a small tremolo. I've only ever put the bar in a couple of times. This guitar doesn't get used as much as the Les Pauls and the Fenders, and it's mostly because I'm not a good enough guitarist to make this guitar sound as good as it does. I can play riffs, I can do other stuff, but if you are a lead player, you should definitely check one of these out. Even if you just got the Core model or McCarthy model, you could easily create the same stuff. They make these guitars with the single coil splits, and like I say, I have nothing but love for this guitar. I don't play it as much as I would like to because I'm just not good enough to make it sound good, and the other guitars do rhythm so well. That said, it's a pleasure to own, and I have absolute faith that anybody that can play as well as this guitar deserves to be played would be ecstatic to own one of these. So find you a good, and like I say, versus the Core model, the S2 is a little lighter stripped down model. Doesn't have quite the body curvature, doesn't have quite the figuring, doesn't have quite the upgrades and appearance mods. But if you're a shredder and you're looking for a guitar that you can get the sound out of every single time and want it to be comfortable to play, I wouldn't hesitate. I would definitely recommend these to anybody that has a guitar, a fixation with guitars, and wants to be able to have a guitar that's both pretty and usable. So once again, 35th anniversary S2 Custom 24 in, I believe this is whale blue, but I could be wrong on that. Maybe it's ocean blue, something like that. So this one is the black or ebony Les Paul Classic, and it has been modified by the Gibson Demo Shop to be black and white, and it's pretty cool. It's a very nice guitar. It also has the 490R and 490T pickups, and I got this one because I really wanted to get another guitar that had 490R and 490T pickups after I got rid of the last Les Paul Classic that had 490R and 490T pickups, because they're a little less bitey than the 500s or the 498s are, and 496, and I really liked it. It's a nice smooth playing guitar, has a nice creamy sound to it. This particular one, like I say, has really a pretty solid little black and white thing going on. I still think I'm going to change these buttons out. As it turns out, you cannot just randomly decide you want to change from Gibson Deluxe to Kluson Deluxe because they are inherently different. And I did not realize that the shafts were that big a difference on there. So I will have to find me some Gibson Deluxe, because I ordered some Kluson Deluxe to go on there, and they just didn't work. So I will have to figure out a set of either white or silver Gibson Deluxe tuners to go on this one. Now here is the Mystic Forest Burst Les Paul Classic, and it doesn't look anything like a normal classic. It has almost none of the things you think of as classic appointments, but it does look good doing it. The Mystic Forest Burst was a sprayed on deal, and they later came back with like a Blurple Blast or something like that. It was very similar, but it was just a little bit different, maybe a little bit more blue. And so that was something that was also done by the demo shop. This one has the Dirty Fingers Plus pickups in it. And, well, I guess it's Dirty Fingers Plus in the neck and then just regular Dirty Fingers in the bridge. But this guitar has already lived a storied life. And the fun part about it is all the numbers on the serial number are either a 2 or a 0. With that in mind, this guitar wound up being sold. The buyer couldn't take delivery of it. UPS shipped it back, and I just took that as the universe saying, look, keep this guitar. So this one's going to stay around for a while because obviously the universe wants me to continue to own this one. The playability is great. This one has a lot of history to it, even though it hasn't been live all that long. Gibson didn't know what year model it was when they put it on there. So it's, like I say, it's a pretty fun guitar. Actually, this guitar is listed as Enchanted Forest Burst on the box, but they listed it as Mystic Forest Burst. So you decide what you want to call it. I just call it pretty. Oh, and also, to finally round out that story of this guitar was shipped with a soft case. So it was the equivalent of a gig bag, but it's the soft aero case or whatever Gibson calls theirs. And I found a guy selling a mid 2000s / to 2010s era Les Paul case locally and picked it up for a good deal. And now it lives happily in a much better contrasting hard shell case in a much better environment than the original Gibson bag. Next we have the Les Paul Modern in Sparkling Burgundy. I love this guitar. It's really just good. There's a lot of hate for the Moderns because of the way their appointments are, but the ebony fretboard with the trapezoid inlays and the coil splitting and everything else this guitar does, it does so well. It's hard to be upset about it. And I know that it's not traditional, and I know it's not what the purists think of as the most amazing guitar in the world, but there's just nothing bad about it. It's got a good weight, it doesn't punish you for playing it, and most of all, it looks good doing it. Sparkling Burgundy is one of those colors that really just goes well. So even though I know that Moderns are not real popular, they are inherently good guitars. And if you're looking for something that's a little bit lighter and a little easier to play in the upper register, they are definitely good guitars to go for. So I need help from the community on this one. Now, was the Tri-Burst ever available anywhere other than like at where's like Guitar Center or something? Is this a guitar that was available somewhere else and Gibson just did this? I know that they frequently take guitars that are, factory seconds and modify them, but some of them come out a little bit different. This one, I think, wound up here because of the way this perimeter is. And I'm not usually a perimeter burst guy, but something about this one spoke to me. And the way the red just comes out on this guitar is gorgeous. It's got the usual teardrop, but then there's a perimeter that brings off the red. So the yellow / amber does the teardrop, and then the red continues all the way to the perimeter. And I'm not sure that's the way that's supposed to be, but it looks good doing it. This one has been modified to have the 490R and 500T pickups, as well as the classics coil splitting phase and bypass. So it does some pretty cool party tricks. and looks amazing doing it. The top in person is significantly more moving than what pictures will let it see. If you see it in person, there's movement to it that you can't get on the camera or video. So it's a pretty awesome guitar. Probably going to stay around for a while. Somebody offers me more than I paid for it, it's likely that it'll go away, but it is definitely one that I'm glad we picked up. But it's a 60s traditional in tri-burst. So it's a Les Paul 60s traditional. I think it's 21 model. I think I had a video on. You'll have to look at the video to be able to tell for sure. So I think I'll call the last one a 60s traditional, but it's a 60s standard in tri-burst. Now this one is a 58 reissue in lemon burst. Sorry, my allergies are killing me today because of the way we went from freezing cold to Texas warm weather. Now this one has a moving top that you just almost can't catch on video. No matter where I go, it'll never really focus in on the movement in the top. And this one has been modified by the demo shop as well. And it is absolutely a great playing guitar. It will give the tones you expect from a reissue and just plays butter smooth. I really, really, really enjoy this guitar, and I can't tell you how much it pleases me that this guitar is as comfortable to play as it looks like it should be. Nothing really interesting, mostly black plastics on this one. A little bit of VOS aging on the hardware, most notably up here on the tuners. So, you can see over on the left-hand side that tuner has been heavily aged, but it does a really good job of being a Les Paul and giving the sounds and the feel of Les Paul. Heavy, yes. Definitely what you think a 58 reissue should be. So, overall, lemon burst. Not usually a fan of yellow guitars, but this one is a yellowy amber color that actually looks really good and is actually fun to play. So, again, 58 reissue. This is one of the custom shop modified ones. I would say if you can pick one up, you should. Now, 60s Tribute P90. This guitar was kind of a whim purchase. It was one that I thought would make a good giveaway item for the channel when we got to 1,000 subscribers, which we have not. We've gotten just shy of 500. It's been a little over a year, almost a year actually, since I posted that video, so we're still working our way there. So when we do, this one will probably go away as a gift to celebrate our 1,000th subscriber. With that in mind, this guitar is actually really fun, and I'm going to miss it when it does finally go away because it really is comfortable. It's a 2016 model. It has the P90s, doesn't have any other fancy, any kind of fade reversal or any kind of tricks that it does. It's just a nice playing P90 tribute, and it does have some really good sound. It just does this really good growl, and with P90s, it's capable of knocking out some pretty good noise. I would say these guitars are definitely worth the price if you're looking for a guitar to play out and about. The humbucker and the P90 models, both a little bit lighter than the normal Gibson traditional standard studio even, so they are comfortable and cheap, and honestly they make good gig guitars. I would definitely say that On a scale of 1 to 10 for fun to play, this one's a solid 9. Speaking of P90s, here is the Inverness Green SG Special P90. Now, they're light and they're super duper neck heavy, but SGs make for great guitars. They are comfortable, they are easy to play in a higher register, and overall they're light. Now, like I say, they're neck heavy, and that's pretty much the case, especially with ones that have all the upgraded appointments and such. This one is a little bit lighter than normal, but nothing, I mean, it does have binding on the neck. So overall, if the Les Paul is a 9, this one is probably about an 8, 8.5. The Les Paul just feels better in your hand when compared to this one. It makes a different growl in here. And I almost wonder if the P90s are different somehow. Not really sure how that would be, but apparently this one has a little bit different sound. But it is fun to play, and it is a Gibson. So it's got Gibson stuff that it does. This one is one that, if it could tell stories, would probably have a lot of really interesting stories to tell. When it first arrived, it had a different pick guard on it and was kind of in rough shape. The wiring was all messed up. The pots were noisy. So it took a little cleaning and a little work to get this one back to stock glory. And I won't lie, it's an amazing guitar to play now. It does have, since 2014, the special 12th fret inlay. And the overall condition is, I'd say, fair at best. Wouldn't really call it good. There's some dings, there's some scratches. Overall, it has been a great guitar to own because it does explore things. And to be honest with you, I was a Hetfield fan. As a rhythm guitarist, that's been my thing since I was a teenager, and this guitar fulfills that. So nothing sounds and nothing plays like grabbing an Explorer and ripping out some Metallica riffs. And this one does that in spades. I'm not really sure what the pickups are in this one. Never really looked it up. Never taken it apart to find out. When we do a string change on it, eventually, I'm sure I'll tear it apart at that point and find out exactly what the pickups are. But this one right now just keeps on chugging, and I love the way it plays. So, on to the next. This one is another one that, if it could tell stories, I would love to sit and listen. It is a 1989 HM Strat. And the HMs, when they were new, were pretty unloved. Now, I love it because it was my first guitar. 24 fret Stratocasters generally don't get much love, especially from the purists who think 21 and 22s, and realistically 21s, are the guitars to have. So this one has been modified to have a hot rail in the front with the other two standard pickups. Now, some people argue back and forth, but I happen to know, because I've taken one apart, the bridge pickup, if it's stock, is a DiMarzio. The collar tremolo, some people like them, some people hate them. I kind of like them. Never really had a problem with mine. I don't dive bomb like some people do, so therefore don't generally have a problem with it. That DiMarzio right here, though, has a great tone if you dial it in right. You'll have to adjust the pole pieces, which I have done on this one, and overall makes a big difference, because when you get it dialed in, it is amazing. Now, that said, this was not originally mine. I had one just like it as my first guitar, and it got stolen. I was guilty of trusting people more than I should have back in the day. I would have really liked to have gotten another one with the blue instead of the pink or purple, but tis what it is. I like this guitar. It plays great, and it has not disappointed me ever. Neither one of them, the original one or this one, has ever disappointed me when I picked it up and played it. Sometimes you do a trade with a guitar and you think to yourself, man, I'm going to miss that. And sometimes you are so willing to do it that you overlook anything and everything else. And this is one of those times where that was exactly what I was thinking, because I could not believe someone wanted to trade me this guitar for a very average Les Paul Studio. This is a 2008 model Fender American Select mahogany Stratocaster, and it's unique because a abalone inlays, as well as the titanium, I think, nut. The roller bridge, I think it's titanium, but it could be something else. But this guitar from head to toe is just a beauty. And in the sun, it is gorgeous, especially with those abalone inlays. It's got this S1 first generation switching, so it doesn't have the ability to split the actual humbucker, which is dumb, but everything about this guitar does really well. And in position 3 with S1 engaged, it is basically a dual humbucker guitar, and it does that really well. It's heavy. It's a mahogany guitar. It's just not light, but it plays amazing. The fretboard is incredibly comfortable, and at the end of the day, it is definitely a keeper because there's just nothing like it. Fender doesn't make them very often. When they do, if you find one, snap it up. I think the black headstock really adds to the allure of this guitar. So again, would I recommend this guitar? Absolutely. So I'm not saying that all baritone guitars should have P90s, but this guitar kind of makes a case for that. Baritone guitars are niche market, and I always wanted one, and I thought they were interesting, and I'm not good enough to play it. I'll be honest. That's just the reality of it. I know how to play a few licks, and there's some surf music that sounds good on it, and there's some other stuff, but overall, it's just a guitar. And I will tell you this, it's very nice to play. The longer scale really does bring kind of a bass feel to it, and the tone, because it's got 14 gauge strings, is a deeper tone. That said, even if you capoed up, as we discovered in a video, it makes a different sound. So I would say that this guitar is niche. And if you're going to buy a baritone, get a Squier. It's the right price. It's comfortable. It does everything right. Now, if you're looking for a high-end guitar, this ain't it. There's some interesting quality control on it, but if you're looking for a guitar to get you into a baritone and to give you the sound and the feel so you can see if you're really interested in it, these guitars are great. And the wood is actually really good. The neck is comfortable. It's very easy to play. And overall, it is probably the easiest step into a baritone guitar. Like I say, I'm not good enough to make this guitar sound like it should. But every once in a while, It's really fun just to pick it up and plug it in. Make sure you have a big speaker in your amp. Little speakers just blow straight out. Or play it through a small speaker, like a 10-inch speaker, bass amplifier. We have a 210 bass amplifier that is a Ampeg Micro XL, and it handles this guitar great, and it gets the sound right too. So Ampeg Micro CL plus Squier Baritone Telecaster equals happy point. The American Pro 2 Telecaster. This particular one is in Dark Knight, I think, like dun 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 Batman type Dark Knight. But anyway, this guitar does the classic Tele sound in a way that just makes you comfortable with it. If you're looking for Tele twang, if you're looking for a little bit of flexibility with the phase reversal, this guitar can do it. And it's at a price point that's pretty reasonable. They've gone up since I got this one, but they're still less than $2,000, I think. $1,799 maybe? They're somewhere in that range. I would say if you are in the market for a Tele, pick one of these up first. Try it at a music store if you can find one, because they really do make a case for having a basic Telecaster in your playing ability, in your gig bag or in your hard chase, because there's nothing that it doesn't do. The rosewood on this one is just stunningly beautiful in pretty much every lighting. It is every bit as streaky as you think it should be, and the rosiness of it is way more than I've seen on rosewood fretboards of the past. Even if you look back in this video, you'll see the 92 Telecaster. It has a rosewood fretboard that looks completely different than this. So I'm a fan. I dig it. I think that these guitars may be a little underrated, or maybe, depending on who you are, they're exactly what you think they are. I would definitely play it, and honestly, the color is pretty amazing too. Now, ES style guitars are kind of love them or hate them guitars. They're never really super duper loved, never really super duper hated. They just kind of fill in for people in different locations. And sounds all across different genres have benefited from these guitars. The next three here are pretty love them or hate them guitars. I love all three of them, but that's probably why I got them. This is an ES 335, and it is I think this was originally supposed to be a studio satin that they sprayed an aged lacquer over. Because if you look up here at the logo and crown, you'll see they're a little darker than they're supposed to be, and they're also satin instead of gloss. So I think when they resprayed this one with the satin, it toned it down some, because I think it shows as being like tobacco burst, but I couldn't find a tobacco burst Gibson ES 335. So I kind of think this was a vintage burst that turned tobacco when they sprayed the aged toner over it. So it has standard T-type pickups. It is every bit what you think an ES 335 should sound like. And because it's satin, it plays like a dream. Now, it doesn't have a pick guard, and that's something that the next two will have, but they are also not Gibsons. The Epiphone Lucille is really one of my favorite guitars. This particular iteration is, I think, a significantly nicer version than the previous generations, and the ebony fretboard and the better looking headstock just make it an amazing guitar. It has the Veritone, it has the gold appointments, it has the tortoiseshell looking pick guard that's multi-layer. There's nothing it doesn't really do except for coil splitting, which on this guitar, you don't miss it. You don't need it. It doesn't do that on the original Lucille either. The fact that it doesn't have F-holes really does cut down on feedback on stage. I've used this guitar out and about a couple times. My daughter's name is Lucille. That's one of the reasons I liked it so much, because I couldn't resist it. But at the end of the day, these guitars are a phenomenal value. And for the price of upgrading the case, which is about $125, $150, do it. You'll wind up with $1,100 out of pocket buying one brand new from someplace like Sweetwater with the case shipped to your house, and you'll be one of the best bargains you've ever picked up. Joe Bonamassa. Love him or hate him, he's got a guitar collection that spans decades. Some of the best decades that have ever been known for musical instruments. This one is 62 reissue of a 335, and it was one that belonged to him and that he wound up selling and eventually getting back. With that in mind, it is not a Gibson, but it does some stuff that it has some appointments that are different than even the Gibson 335. For instance, 5-ply guitar, layers on the actual guitar. So it's not just maple, poplar, maple like a 3-ply. It's maple. Some say it's all maple. Maple. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm not willing to cut one in half to find out. But I'll say this, it is a really good playing guitar, and it has Gibson pickups in it, and because of that, it sounds so much like a Gibson that it's scary. The playability on this guitar is very high. Maybe that's Joe Bonamassa. Maybe that's somebody at Gibson making the guitars better than they used to be. No matter how you look at it, this guitar has a sound that is 100% authentic Gibson style. And even though it's an Epiphone, I would say it's probably worth every penny. These are a little expensive, $1,300, but they did tend to drop on price for a little bit there. Probably will jump back up after the run of them has come to an end. So if you can find one at a good price or $1,000 or less, pick it up, because there's a pretty high likelihood with Joe Bonamassa's name attached to it, at some point it'll be worth more. So this one is the 2012 Gibson Les Paul Deluxe in gold top, and it is originally purchased because it was a continuation of the deluxes that I'd had from the past. I had originally had a 77 deluxe that wound up getting sold because, well, somebody offered me more than what I had in the guitar. So couldn't say no to that. And these guitars, I think, give a great sound. Anyone that is looking for a little more punch, a little less depth or deep in their Les Paul, the Deluxe does it. This, of course, is the 2020 Custom, and it has a light VOS work done to it, and it has the 57 Classics in it, and they just sound perfect in this guitar. Now, some say that the custom is not worth it. I would say that the custom shop customs are definitely worth it. So depending on what you're wanting and depending on what you like to play, I would say that a custom is definitely worth the money. This is the 2007 Les Paul Custom, and it is a wonderful guitar that has the standard 490R, 498T setup in it. Now this one was made just after the custom shop started fully making the Les Paul Customs. So it isn't as advanced as the modern custom is. But realistically, when we pulled these covers off, we discovered that a lot of what the 2020 had in it was pretty much the same as what the custom shop was doing 13 years earlier. So sometimes doing things the old school way really is just better. And apparently, when it comes to the custom shop, they feel that way. I always try to display and talk about these together because of what they are and who they belong to. These were originally purchased by my dad because he had a Gibson EBO that was a 1963 model that matched, well, it was cherry, not really sunburst because it was just heritage cherry on the EBO, but he bought it at the same time that the Gibson Dove was purchased. This one is a 2014 SG bass, and it is in the same heritage cherry that the original EBO was in. This one is a 2019 SG Tribute, and it was purchased because it had so similar markings and wood to the SG bass. So Dad was enamored by the fact that both of them were cherry guitars made by Gibson. Now, the 2019 has aged, it seems, a little more, and it's possibly because I tend to play it more often than the SG bass. Not being really a bass player, I do play the bass, but really only when I'm feeling nostalgic. So these two guitars stay together pretty much on display. They live in their cases most of the time, but when they come out, they almost always come out at the same time because I'm kind of nostalgic about the fact that they both belong to my dad. So anyway, 2014 SG bass, 2019 SG Tribute. So that's it for 2022 on the electrics. And I'm sure there will be something unique or different in 2023 that we'll do unboxings of and decide if I like it or decide if I don't like it, or compare it to other guitars and find out what's the best and the worst. But as of right now, that's what we've got. And like, comment, subscribe, talk about which one you like the most, which one would you pick up, what setup would you do, and which ones would you want amplifier wise. What would you like to hear them through? I got a couple of different amplifiers here, of course. Probably going to start playing more on the JCM 800 sometime soon, but we'll just have to see. Until then, y'all be safe out there, and till next time, enjoy.